AP Environmental Science with Miss Haskins, feeding the world. Sustainable agriculture, it is possible to produce enough food for the world to eat. And it's possible to produce enough food without destroying the land and polluting the environment and reducing biodiversity. So sustainable agriculture fulfills the need for food and fiber. That's like to make clothes, while enhancing the quality of soil and minimizing the use of non-renewable resources and allowing economic viability to return to the actual farmer. So it emphasizes the ability to continue agriculture in a given piece of land indefinitely through conservation and soil improvements. Sustainable agriculture often requires more labor than industrial agriculture. So it makes more expensive, higher cost for this to actually take place. But practitioners of sustainable agriculture consider the improvement a long-term type of thing. And so it's worth the extra cost initially. Many of the practices used in sustainable agriculture are traditional farming methods, like the traditional farms of like India, Kenya, Thailand. Typically the use of plant waste as fertilizer is just one of the ways instead of being able to afford synthetic fertilizer. So such traditional farmers may also practice what we call intercropping, and that is which two or more crop species are planted like on the same field side by side, and one of them promotes the interaction between the other one. So the most famous type of intercropping is corn, which requires a great deal of nitrogen, can be planted along with the pea plant, pea plants that make the little pea pods, which is a nitrogen fixing crop. And so if we intercrop them, then one can fix a nutrient for the other one that is that needs a lot of that particular nutrient to grow. And additionally, crop rotation achieves the same effect by rotating the crop species in a field from season to season. So, for example, we can plant peas in one area, put the nitrogen back into the soil, and then plant corn, which will move the soil or move the nitrogen out of the soil. And it's not always about these vegetable crops either. Intercropping trees with vegetables is a is a practice that is sometimes what we call agroforestry, and it allows vegetation of all different heights, including the trees, to act as windbreaks. And so they might catch soil that might otherwise be blown away, or they can also grow fruit trees like this. Or at the end of the day, when they come time to harvest the crop, they can chop the trees down and use it as firewood. But these alternative methods of land preparation can be used to not only help preserve the actual soil, but also help prevent erosion. So, for instance, contour plowing is plowing and harvesting parallel to the topographic contours of the land. So the topography of the actual land helps prevent erosion and water runoff while still allowing the particular advantages of the plowing to take place. Some farmers actually plant an autumn crop like winter wheat, and it'll sprout before the frost sets in so that the land does not remain bare through all of its regular plantings. No-till agriculture is becoming increasingly more popular. Perennial plants, they live for multiple years, and there's usually no need to disturb them in the soil. And in contrast, annual plants like wheat and corn, they only live for one season. And so essentially we need to till them up. So farmers till the land for multiple reasons, usually to get rid of all of the stuff that was there. Sometimes they will do a physical turn process to turn the soil upside down, which pushes all of the nutrients that were at the bottom up to the top soil. And when you expose those types of things, you kill roots. You can also kill insect pupae. All right, so some critics, they argue that plowing and tilling have a negative effect on soils, just period. And soils, they take hundreds or even thousands of years to develop, like, as we have learned. And so every time soil is plowed or tilled, soil particles that were attached to other soil particles or even plant roots, they become disturbed. And so when they're disturbed, they're more susceptible to erosion. But not only that, repeated plowing over and over again increases the exposure of organic or deep organic matter that's in the soil to oxygen. And when it's exposed to oxygen, it leads to oxidation of any organic matter and the reduction of the organic matter content in the soil, period. And so this also increases atmospheric CO2 concentrations. So tilling, in addition to irrigating and overproduction, will also lead to severe soil degradation. And in many parts of the world, it is pretty severe. So no-tilling agriculture is an agricultural method in which farms, they do not turn their soils in between seasons, and they use other methods to reduce topsoil erosion. Another alternative agriculture practice is called integrated pest management, or IPM. And it uses a variety of techniques designed to minimize pesticide inputs. Those techniques are crop rotation, intercropping, and planting of pest-resistant crop varieties. So to talk about each three of these individually, crop rotation and the use of pest-resistant crop varieties prevent pest infestation. So if I have a crop in an area and it has a specific pest that likes to live there and eat on it, if that pest has laid its eggs in that soil, then we can hinder that pest development by putting a new plant in there, by rotating out a crop where that pest doesn't like that new crop. All right, so the infected plants or the infected material or the soil that's there eventually just dies. Intercropping, as we talked about earlier, it may also make it harder for specialized pests to be successful. So with only one crop present, they can establish themselves. But farmers can also provide a habitat for species that like to prey on this one particular pest. So agroforestry encourages the presence of insect-eating birds to kind of hang out there. And so, they like to eat the insects that that like to eat the plants. So there's a couple of different things here that we can do. But IPM practitioners, they still use pesticides, but they just limit the application of them through very careful observations. Farmers regularly inspect their crops for the presence of insects and other potential hazards. And if they can catch them early, then we can use some natural methods in order to control what's going on there. And then maybe use a smaller dose of pesticide. Now, I know I made this integrated pest management thing sound like it's a good idea, but it's just my opinion that it's probably one of the dumbest things that humans have ever created to do. The effects of IPM is that you have to, first of all, you have to train farmers to do this correctly. And so if you can train them, you can get this really good turnout. You can get significant reduction in the use of pesticides. You can also, yield improvements that occurred towards other farmers just by having the practice go on in a certain community. So you can gain higher yields of plants or crops or whatever. But essentially, you have to do it in a smart fashion because the introduction of an animal or like a predator of something that doesn't usually like to be there, it can have the opposite effect that we want. And although it may go after and kill the pest, you never know if there's something more yummy out there that it likes. And so it can turn on the natural environment. All right, enough of my soapbox. Let's talk about organic agriculture. That's the production of crops with the use of synthetic pesticides or fertilizers. I'm sorry, without the use of those. And so organic agriculture follows a basic set of principles. You have to use ecological principles and work with the natural system rather than dominating those systems. You have to keep much of the organic matter that was originally there and the nutrients in the soil and farm that area. You have to avoid the use of synthetic fertilizers and synthetic pesticides, period. You also have to maintain the soil by increasing the soil mass, so through biological activity or beneficial chemical properties, however that happens. And then basically you have to reduce the adverse environmental effects of agriculture. And so, there's a couple of different things that are going on here when an organic farmer starts to establish their farm as being organic. Alternative techniques for farming animals and fishing are becoming increasingly more popular. Animals and fish are generally more energy intensive to raise and prepare than eating vegetable crops. But there are methods for animal and fish production that have lower environmental impacts. So let's talk in this section about a few of them. Not all meat comes from the CAFOs. Free-range chicken and beef are becoming increasingly popular in the U.S. Some people find it more ethically acceptable to eat a chicken or a cow that has wandered free around in a farm and spent its entire life confined into a small space. Free-range meat is how it's properly when it's properly produced is more likely to be sustainable than meat produced in the CAFOs. Because these free-range animals are not as likely to spread disease as those that are kept in close quarters. We're less likely to use antibiotics and other medications to keep their health up. And so these animals graze or they feed on natural, productive land with little or no supplemental feeding. So less fossil fuels also go into play here to create these free-range meat varieties. And additionally, manure and urine is also dispersed over a range of area, and so it's not concentrated. And so it allows natural process of detritivores and decomposers to kind of come into the soil. So as a result, there's no need to treat or dispose of massive quantities of manure. However, on the negative side, free-range operations, they use a lot more land than CAFOs, and so the cost of that meat is significantly higher.